think that the appeal of Eric's mission is that it is a very pure one.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Till Death Do a Scream. I'm, of course, Rob, and this is my lovely goth wife, Mayhem Mel.
Hello.
Thank you all for your continued love and support when it comes to the show. I do want to reiterate this. We are just a small channel right now. We got a lot of love when it comes to numbers and stuff like that. Please take a moment to subscribe. I promise we won't, attack you like on social media. We won't, it won't cost you a thing. If you love our content, if you love hard and you love what we're doing, we definitely just want your eyes. That's all. And we just want you to start our, big fear family here.
Subscribe, hit the bell, do the things.
Yeah. All that, YouTube stuff I hate having to talk about. But yeah, please subscribe for sure. And with that said, we are actually going to talk about a movie tonight that is obviously very close to our hearts. I was, technically a child of the 90s, just like you were.
Yep.
Look, we went through, the summer of Batman, which, that impacted me, obviously, as a, huge Batman fan that I still am. But this one, really just kind of, I don't know. The best way to put it is, it just kind of, altered my DNA somehow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what are we talking about tonight, babe?
We are talking about The Crow, the original Crow with Brandon Lee.
That's correct.
Yes. One of my all-time favorite movies.
Yep. And as you can see, we came correct, obviously. This is for you, Brandon, all this time and energy. It's crazy that this movie's 30 years old and it feels like we still talk about Brandon every day. You know what I mean? It's almost like it happened yesterday. You still feel that way, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just one of those things where, for me, it's just I never, it'll cross my mind every once in a while. Because there's obviously a lot of Crow stuff out there. So when I see it, it just, for people that are fans of it now and weren't there for the actual event when it actually happened, I don't know. I don't want to be one of those guys where it's just you wouldn't understand. But yeah, it was really...
You really wouldn't understand. It was just...
devastating.
Yeah.
So anyway, with that, this is a film that's based off a graphic novel by James O'Barr. I remember meeting him once at a convention that I just, just kind of said yes to my friend to go with him. He's just, hey, you want to go to this comic convention? I'm like, sure, whatever, and I went. And, it was just a bunch of writers and stuff. So that's why I wasn't too excited. It wasn't a lot of actors there and shit. Wasn't really in my wheelhouse. So I see James O'Barr just sitting there and he's smoking a cigarette and he's real quiet. And, and I had maybe a 10-minute conversation with him. And you know what? I know he's just this reclusive guy who, obviously has a lot of pain, from his past experiences and stuff, but you might as well have been talking to God. You know what I mean? And he's very appreciative of the fact that people do love his work. But yeah, it was definitely an experience to get to meet him for that small amount of time. But he made The Crow. If you don't know the story, he actually had the love of his life get killed by a drunk driver.
Oh.
And this was sort of like his
love letter.
His love letter, like his inner turmoil, his inner, like hatred, his inner anger, all this rage, just kind of like, put on paper. So this graphic novel came out, and honestly, like, it wasn't like a huge splash or anything like that. It was just like a little independent thing that he put out on its own. I think this is going to sound really stupid to you because it's absolutely the truth, but finally studios came to his attention. And he decided to walk out of the room like in the last 5 minutes of the conversation because, and this is absolutely the truth, they wanted to make it a musical starring Michael Jackson.
No. Oh, God, no.
Yeah. So, yeah, of course, James was just like, I'm going to take my ball now. Fuck that shit. So years later, there was...
This ain't Thriller, baby.
No, absolutely not. So years later, could you imagine how terrible that would be?
Oh my!
Like I honestly think that would put
oh my God,
like Cats to shame or something like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, years later, he was approached by the studios again. After this comic book writer had done some comic book, or he tried to like promote some comic book to this comic book company, and they denied him because they felt it was too much like The Crow. So when he found out about The Crow, he ended up, trying to hunt, Barr down. He finally found him, and he was just like, look, if you ever consider doing, The Crow as a movie, like I absolutely like am in love with it. I would love to do the screenplay, help you with the screenplay. So that's kind of like where the ball, started rolling for The Crow. You know what I mean? Because honestly, like, look, we mentioned Batman in '89. There was, the Christopher Reeve Supermans and stuff like that, but there wasn't like really like a ton of superhero films out there. You know what I mean?
This movie is super gothic.
It's super gothic, but yes, technically it is a superhero film because like this kind of like,
I think he's more of an anti-hero.
Sure.
He's not really a superhero, he's an anti-hero.
Sure, but this was also the catapult for R-rated, flicks, like Blade later on and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, if there was no Crow, I don't think there'd be any of that kind of stuff.
Right. But I don't think he ever claimed to be a hero in this. He was out for revenge.
Yes.
That's why what makes him an anti-hero,
I don't think he's an anti-hero, to be honest with you. Because, like, look.
He's more like a Deadpool.
There's a lot of people, that are like, not to get, political or anything, but there's a lot of people that, like are kind of parading Luigi Mangione around after killing a CEO. I think these acts are so dastardly and horrible in this movie that you can't help but root for Eric Draven to get his revenge.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Well, after what had been done to him and to his fiance, yeah.
So before we talk about the movie, let's talk about the sad part, because unfortunately we have to mention it. If you guys aren't familiar, Brandon Lee was killed on the set of this movie. It was actually it was
an accident.
Yeah, well, it was an accident, but the same thing that happened with Alec Baldwin in this movie Rust, where like he murdered somebody, unfortunately due to negligence or whatever. It was just basically a whole situation of certain primers were used, and then certain actual charges were used, and it kind of sort of became like a real bullet. Unfortunately, the actor who plays Funboy, Michael Massey, was the one that pulled the trigger on this, Prop 34 Smith & Wesson.
Destroy him.
And shot Brandon Lee in the abdomen. So because of the primer and whatever was going on in the charges that weren't really being looked at on that particular day of shooting, it became a real bullet.
Yeah.
But
and it was in the scene where he was being shot going out the window.
Yes. Yep. So like to mention Michael Massey. Michael Massey was somebody that I actually defended for years, because I remember even when he passed away, the article said that, the man who killed Brandon Lee. I'm like, what the fuck?
That's horrible.
You know what I mean?
That's horrible.
This dude literally could not even continue to act. I think he did a part in 7, but that's pretty much it. I mean, he was just done.
Devastated. He was devastated.
I think he just basically said every day I woke up and just thought about it every day.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, that would devastate you.
Because
Trauma.
the thing about Brandon Lee is that Brandon Lee was just so goddamn charismatic that everybody just loved him. Yeah. To get to Brandon Lee was he did Rapid Fire. He did some movies with Dolph Lundgren and shit like that. didn't really like have a lot to do with, you know, this type of world or whatever. I think there was actually like different considerations when it came to casting. I think Christian Slater was kind of on the docket for a while.
Oh, he almost died.
Yeah. I think River Phoenix was the second choice. But, you know, River Phoenix passed away later on outside the Viper Room. But he had his own demons, apparently. But, you know, Brandon wasn't not really known for this kind of stuff. So when he asked to play Eric Draven, like, everybody's just kind of like, yeah, Bruce Lee's son? I don't know. You know what I mean? So he lost a ton of weight for this role. And he was there, like, you know, for all the physicality. He was there for all the stunt work. He was, like, you know, there the entire time. And he was able to, like, basically, like, just have everybody reconsider. Like, you know what? We're going to give this guy a shot.
Did a great job.
For sure.
Did a great job.
And I will say this, and I've been saying this for 30 years, that if, you know, like, Brandon Lee was alive to this day, I think Brandon Lee could have been, like, the Tom Cruise of Hollywood, I think.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, still working, A-lister, you know, like...
Oh, yeah.
Amazing. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Like, Brad
definitely.
Pitt and guys like that would have a run for their money when it comes to casting, I think.
Because Brandon Lee was hot as fuck.
He was a very handsome dude.
He was so...
So his portrayal apparently was, you know, basically not even just lauded as one of his best works, but better than anything his father had ever done, too. Before we start with the story, let's talk about your love for this movie. Because, you know, I mean, hey, we kind of beat the same heart.
This movie is what really brought me into my whole, like, my gothness. My gothness.
Yeah.
I think the first time I ever saw this movie, I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Even the villains. The brother and the sister.
Yeah.
The sister, I was like, oh my God, she's
Bailing, yeah.
fucking hot. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about the weird familial stuff.
I mean, the music in this movie, just the way it was shot, the dark and the light.
Let's mention
violence.
that you weren't anybody unless you had the soundtrack. And I remember I had the soundtrack. I used to blast that all the time. And also the score by Graham Revell. That's what I actually used to sleep to, like, most nights when I was young. Just play the Crow soundtrack.
Oh my God, this movie just... everything about it was just perfect.
I think so, yeah.
Down to the girl, Rochelle.
Yes.
You know? Rochelle, like, even her character, you know what I mean? Just this kid who's just trying to, like, get by in life, and you know, her mom is off doing heroin, and you know, with Fun Boy, right? Yeah, with Fun Boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I years ago I had a project that I was trying to get Rochelle on, so I got a chance to talk to her on the phone and stuff, and she's really cool. But Rochelle is, like, so, like, sacred cow when it comes to this movie.
Well, no, she was traumatized.
Yeah.
She was a child.
Yeah.
She was traumatized by by what happened to Brandon Lee. I mean, she was really close with him.
On the set, yeah.
On the set, they were very, very close.
Let's talk about the movie. So, how many times did you see it when it first came out?
In the theater? 9 times.
Ooh, okay. I got you beat 10.
Oh, damn.
10 for me. And I'll tell you what, when the fucking VHS came out, oh, I was elated.
That was playing.
I burned that shit out.
It was on loop.
Yeah.
It was on loop.
Yep.
Yeah.
We should mention, too, when it comes to this film, it was the first time we're ever really seeing CG.
Yes.
Because, you know, because of those scenes where Brandon wasn't able to be a part of it,
they had to CG his face on
a stunt actor who happened to be Chad Stahelski, and Chad Stahelski ended up being Keanu Reeves' stunt actor in the Matrix series, and then the director of the John Wick series.
There you go.
So, yeah.
There you go.
So when you see Brandon Lee running around in certain scenes, that's actually Chad doing all that stuff.
There you go.
With Brandon's face superimposed over top of it. And I'll tell you what.
They did a good job.
It's pretty damn flawless for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, it holds up.
All right. So we are... well, also, we should mention that, you know, we met in Michigan. Is it really like this? Yeah. Somewhat.
Yeah, in certain areas, yeah.
Devil's Night, my new favorite holiday. Regardless of that, he breaks out of his grave.
Well, first things first, you see what happens.
Yeah.
First things first, what happens is that, Eric Draven and his fiance, they're getting ready. They're going to go get married on Devil's Night.
Actually, Halloween.
They're going to get married on Halloween. And they're in this apartment building. They're in this apartment that is, they're trying to get people out of it, basically. And you have these 3 guys that break in and they rape and torture her. And then they shoot him. They shoot Eric Draven and he flies out the window.
We should also mention too that T-Bird, Tintin, Funboy, all these guys get into the house because they have these fake deeds. When it comes to eviction, this is actually based on true events that happened in Michigan.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Detroit, I believe it.
Yeah. So guys would come in, we see a bunch of stuff on TikTok now where people are masquerading cops outside and shit like that. Yeah. Same kind of thing.
I believe it.
We have a deed from the city and, blah, 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 and that's how they got in.
Yep.
So, like you said, it's really brutal. Even though you don't really see anything, you just kind of see it in flashes or whatever, you obviously clearly know what's going on.
She lives, for another 24 hours?
Yeah.
And then passes away.
Mm-hmm. So
Shelley. Her name's
Shelley Webster, yeah. So as you said, he's, shot and he gets, thrown out the window, pretty much. And Ernie Hudson is the cop on the scene. He ends up, we find out later on that he actually stayed with Shelley the entire 24 hours, and that will come into play later on in the movie. Yeah. So then we see Brandon Lee's grave. We see Eric Draven's grave, and he busts out of it.
And a crow's on there.
Yeah.
Crow is on the tombstone.
The crow is chipping on the tombstone.
Like wakey wakey.
Yeah.
Wakey wakey.
We're told in a little bit of dialogue in the beginning that Crow brings the soul back, for revenge. You know what I mean? So it's pretty much.
It's a bridge between life and death.
Yes. So instantaneously, what's going on in this film. It's not you have to find out later on, hey, what's going on? This dude's back for revenge. It's plain and simple. That's the story. Yeah. So Brandon Lee and all of his hotness, in the rain and. He's following the crow. He goes back to his apartment. He pulls the crime scene tape away, and then he automatically just starts having flashes.
He relives the whole thing all over again.
Yeah.
And then he gets pissed off, and he puts the makeup on. And
I would love to see the, there's clearly because he's got all this gear, right? There's got to be a time. Where his band, he did this for his band or something like that.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, possibly, yeah.
Because, unless it's somehow instilled by the crow, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
It just seems really odd that, if he didn't, you know what I mean? He clearly knew, the design of whatever he's going to do.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a sad clown, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad clown.
Just like this. Yeah. So we get into revenge mode, straight up right away.
And the first one he goes for is
Tintin.
Boom, 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 Tintin.
Yep.
The man with the blades.
Yep. He shanked her pink ass. He loved it. Guy's a real piece of shit.
Oh yeah.
So basically, as T-Bird says, Brandon Lee has a fight with Tintin after running on a rooftop like Batman for a while. He finally sees him smoking a cigarette in the alleyway. He literally falls off, just starts laughing, and goes, "What are you laughing at, crackhead? Halloween ain't till mañana."
Yeah, yes, he does.
And they have a fight. And as I said, as T-Bird says, he showed him all of his knives and all of his organs in alphabetical order.
Yep. And you got to remember too, with every scene where he leaves the body, where Eric Draven leaves the body, he does the outline of a crow.
Some sort of outline of a crow, yes. Yeah, so let's talk about the crow. So basically the crow is his eyes.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
He can see through the crow's eyes.
Through the crow's eyes,
Mhm.
yes. Then we're introduced to Sarah, and Sarah, her mom is a piece of shit.
Yep. Alcoholic, drug addict.
Morphine addict. She's hanging out with the boys
Fun
who
boy.
are fucking eating bullets with shots for fun.
And a shithole dive bar.
Fire it up! Fire it up! Fire it up!
Fire it up. Yep.
Yeah, so, you know, there's a possibility that, you know, like, one of these guys eats like a chili dog or something. Like, it's gonna be a bad night, you know, when the fucking bullet shoots right out of your asshole.
Right.
Know what I mean?
Right.
But anyway, these guys are fucking idiots, and you know, they basically run the streets. But you know, Top Dollar is the leader. That's the guy that runs the whole show. And we get you know into him later with Bai Ling, his sister or adopted sister, and they're clearly fucking.
Oh yeah. It's not his biological sister, obviously.
Right. It's still weird though.
Yeah, it is.
It's still weird though. And you know, and they love to do cocaine and like cut out prostitutes' eyes, and then they put it in this like
Jar.
this you know this cup, this you know whatever, and they
Violin
set the eyes on fire, and they guess they breathe their essence in or some shit with the cocaine.
And then Biling eats them.
And he goes yummy.
Pokes it and
Yeah. Of course, he's played by Michael Wincott, one of my favorite character actors, and I don't think you get a better fucking Top Dollar than this guy.
oh no, he's so good.
He's so good, you know, and you know, I mean, look, you know, for a villain, he's attractive. He had that long jet black hair.
Mm-hmm.
He's sort of like, I don't know. Top Dollar is more like the Peter Steele of the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, like I said, we're introduced to Sarah. Sarah's mom, you know, she's a drug addict. She's a morphine addict. She's hanging out with these guys. And, you know, like she's a bartender at the bar that they hang out
She's a
in.
waitress.
Or, sorry, a waitress. And, you know, Sarah's like always like, you know, just out on the street, just like skateboarding on her own. She almost gets hit by a car.
The cop is always buying her food.
Yep.
Yep.
Always, you know, buying her food because she's like hungry all the time. You know, she doesn't like onions on her hot dogs. They make you fart big time.
Yeah. I don't like onions either.
And meanwhile, we've got Eric Draven going off to the pawn shop run by Gideon with another freaking character actor that I love. And yeah, so Gideon's pawn shop. This is the scene where he tries to get the ring back.
Oh yeah, and he's just closing his eyes and he's tossing rings and he's like, no, 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 no. And then he grabs the ring and he has the flashback of Shelly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first he bangs on the door and the guy starts going, you know, like, hey, you fucking do that again, you're gonna be nothing but street grease, you hear me? Street grease, you motherfucker! And he breaks in the door.
Yep.
And he goes, suddenly I hear a rapping.
There's so many good one-liners in this movie too.
You know, that's the other thing, you know, like for somebody that's getting revenge, like he's really got some, he's got some shtick.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we haven't gotten to my favorite one yet. We'll get to that. But yeah, so basically he's like, you know, quoting Edgar Allan Poe. He smacks the guy in the head with a bat.
Oh yeah.
He's just like, Mr. Gideon, you're not paying attention. Guy tries to shoot him. He fucking stabs his hand. And he goes, I'm looking for an engagement ring. And like you said, he pulls the engagement rings out and he just like, no. And he just feels it without even opening his eyes. He just knows that's the one.
Yeah. Yep. And then he blows that building up and...
Well, that's what he says to him. He goes, he's walking out. He goes, they're going to make a spot out of you. You're going to be nothing but street grease, motherfucker. Street grease. And he goes, does that gasoline I smell? And he's like, no, man, no.
blows up the shop.
And he survives. Gideon somehow survives.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But the whole thing with him was like, you're going to send a message. All of them are going to die tonight. So he goes after Funboy, and Funboy and Darla are just shooting up morphine in the bed.
Yeah.
And
it morphine or is it?
It's morphine, yes.
Oh, I thought it was.
So, like, the bird flies in first, and, Fun Boy's like, hey, birdie, birdie, birdie. It's all high and shit.
Oh, my God, yeah.
And then Brandon Lee comes in. They have a whole, thing about, this is my favorite line, too, where you go, Fun Boy pulls his gun out, and he goes, I went to an inn with 3 nails, and I asked, can you put me up for the night?
Yeah.
And he goes, you got me, dead bang. He puts his hand right next to the gun, pulls the trigger, and he starts laughing like, yeah, score. And he goes, like that. And his hand forms again.
Yep.
So he ends up sticking every single needle of morphine into Fun Boy's body.
Yep. Kills him.
And Darla is hiding in the bathroom. And he basically pulls her up against the mirror and says, morphine is bad for you. Mother is the word of God and lips of hearts of all children. Do you understand?
Mm-hmm. And then he squeezes her arm and he gets the morphine out of her system.
Yep. Sarah's, waiting for you. Go to her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Heavy. What was their relationship? The relationship was that Sarah was just kind of hanging out with Shelley and Eric in their apartment all the time.
Yeah.
So they were basically caretaking for her,
pretty much. Yeah.
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 They lived in the same building or something like that.
I think is that really?
I think they may have lived in the same building.
I don't remember that part. So anyway, yeah. So the vengeance continues, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there's this whole, altercation with, I can't remember the character's name. The one that's like, oh, T-Bird, yeah, this is you, man. Fire it up. That guy.
Oh, yeah, the dumb one. Yeah.
So T-Bird's played by David Patrick Kelly, who I, of course, knew from Warriors Come Out and Play. And, of course, he was in Twin Peaks.
Mm-hmm.
Just stoned off his ass all the time in Twin Peaks. But, yeah, so, he's called T-Bird. He's got this fucking Thunderbird car. Mm-hmm. And there's this whole thing where, Brandon Lee's in the car, he tells him to go off to the wharf or whatever. And I guess, T-Bird's, really into, fucking Bible verses and shit. He's into these Bible verses and he's trying to give himself some sort of attrition and Eric's you're gonna die. I don't give a fuck what you're saying right now. You know what I mean? Throws a bunch of C4 in the car, throws a flare onto his lap, pulls a stick. T-Bird goes flying into the river, blows up as Eric Draven's just going bye. And then he does the awesome thing where, it's just been repeated time and time again afterwards, but this is where it kind of started. He, obviously
does the lighter fluid.
Yes.
Does a crow.
Perfect
fire.
Crow on the sidewalk. And it's a crow of flame. And, so we have this mushmouth asshole, at Top Dollar's place, that's above the club where, Brandon used to play with his band.
Mm-hmm.
There is a conversation that Ernie Hudson has after he blows up the pawn shop. Eric Draven, basically says, freeze. He goes freeze, and he goes, freeze, you're dead, and he goes, well, I'm dead, and I move. So he starts to piece it together. That. This is actually Eric Draven. So, because he was with Shelley for the 24 hours, he actually, knows who this guy is.
And then then Eric Draven touches him and feels everything Shelley went through. He sees through, his eyes.
Yeah, he goes to the apartment, and he goes, Jesus, I thought you were a ghost. And, of course, he's got a beer for him, and he goes, boo, and he just hands him the beer. And he's just I appreciate everything you've done for Shelley or whatever. And then he touches him and he goes, don't touch me. He starts freaking out. And, they have a beautiful little moment, and he goes, so what are you going to do? Sneak out the window or something? He goes, well, I figure I'd go out your back, your
front door. because for some reason, he keeps sneaking up on this guy and then going out a window.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're friends. I'll just go through the front door.
Go through your front door, right?
So then, this is where we get to this mushmouth idiot at Top Dollar's place, and Gideon's like trying to fucking talk to Top Dollar, and of course he's a fucking loudmouth piece of shit, and like he just has enough of this guy, and he ends up not only just shooting him but fucking stabbing him in the throat.
Yeah. But then not only that, you have this big long table, and there's a bunch of people sitting at this table too.
Yeah. And we should also mention, because he's very, very, very little in this movie, but the late great Tony Todd is in this movie as well.
Mm-hmm.
He plays one of Top Dollar's henchmen, but like I said, he doesn't really have a lot of screen time.
Yeah, they probably could afford.
Most likely.
Yeah.
Because I think around this time he was doing shit like Platoon. You know what I mean? He's gonna get together and he's gonna get all the gangs together and they're gonna talk about Devil's Night, because he's just sick and tired of there's Devil's Night greeting cards. You know what I mean? Like nobody's fucking scared anymore. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he just wants to light the whole city on fire. Are we having a good time or what?
Right.
So he's just a proprietor of destruction.
Yes.
So
and he's trying to get rid of these buildings so he can actually build other stuff too.
Yes, absolutely, yes. I think they were all like kind of they allude to the fact that they're kind of coded or whatever, this needs to go, this needs to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're trying to build drug dens or some shit. I'm not sure.
Oh.
Don't know. Whatever these guys do. So he ends up having this meeting. All the gang guys are there. That's where Brandon comes in. There's a great fight where he's just like, I'm sick of hearing him talk. Shoot this piece of shit. You know what I mean? You shoot him like 8 million times. Honestly, for the longest time, I actually thought this was the scene where Brandon got killed.
Really?
Because, dude, there's like 800 fucking guns in this scene.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
So, isn't that interesting how, all of these guns are, clearly blanks, right?
Mm-hmm.
They didn't do anything to him. It was just that one solitary scene. You know what I mean?
That one, yeah.
Absolutely insane. So, yeah, he's underneath the table. He ends up catching a bunch of swords and shit. All of a sudden, he's just, a badass dude. And I guess because of the fact that he's, invincible, he could just do whatever the fuck he wants. Yeah. You know what I mean?
He can be shot up and... Yeah.
But really, honestly, this is the only real scene where we see oh man, Brandon, clearly was taught by his father, because he's got some moves. So yeah.
And that fight scene, I think, is where the Matrix got a lot of their ideas from too.
I think a lot of movies got ideas from this movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. Alex Proyas, when it comes to this film, I think he just had the perfect aesthetic. It just felt like it could be the future, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. It could be the present. That's not really in detail, honestly. It just is this fictional
dark
Detroit.
It's dark. It's grimy.
Yeah.
It's violent.
It's on fire.
It's on fire. Yes.
Yeah. It was just, it's just a dangerous place to live.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that about it. So yeah, after this, this altercation, he ends up getting his man. He drops him out of the, fucking window. He ends up hitting a cop car, and for some reason, the cops in the city never curse. So it's just what the crap. He ends up at a certain point. I can't remember where in the timeline, but he ends up hiding in his apartment because, it's kind of like his lair or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah comes in and goes, hey, I miss you, blah, blah, blah. Because they had actually met up on the street.
Because he said it can't always rain or
it can't rain all the time, which is actually one of his band's songs.
Mm-hmm. That's when she knew it was him.
She knew it was him. So she's like, Eric, I know you're here. And, I miss you and I just want to see you. And she goes, hey, to hell with you, because he doesn't come out. And she, he comes out. He goes, Sarah, I do care. They start hugging. So, clearly she knows that he's alive.
Right.
Or, resurrected.
Right.
So yeah, what happens after that? Do you remember?
The church.
Yes.
The church.
So after his last kill, he just has to go back to his grave. And he is...
Well, no, he has to kill the the big boss, because he's the one that actually.
He didn't know that yet.
Yeah, he did.
No, he didn't. No. So after he killed his last man, who had actually raped Shelley, he goes back to the grave and he touches it, and he's just thinking, like, this is gonna, But the whole time, Bai Ling is like into supernatural shit or whatever. She finds out, like, if you kill the crow, you kill the man. So, like, Top Dollar has this whole, like, plan set up. They're going to kidnap Sarah, and that's where, like, this whole thing, like, ends or whatever. Like, I guess he's getting ready to touch the tombstone, and, like, then he sees a flash of Sarah being kidnapped, and that's where it kind of stops. So,
and then Bai Ling gets his crow.
Yes.
And they kill that crow.
Yeah.
So
you can tell the scene was definitely inspired by Batman '89, because if you remember, the Joker fight was actually in a church as well.
And on a rooftop, yep.
Yeah.
So he ends up having Bai Ling ends up dying.
She gets her eyes pecked out.
Yeah, she gets her eyes pecked out.
Falls into the fucking, yeah.
And then he ends up having a huge fight with the big boss.
Top Dollar, yeah.
Top Dollar. Top Dollar shoots him up, and he ends up killing Top Dollar.
Well, this is what he says to him, because he didn't know it, like, he thought these guys just worked for Top Dollar. So when Top Dollar's like, like getting ready to, kill him, because he like kind of fucking stabbed him, like, with a sword, and like Sarah's like hanging off the end of the fucking church. He basically says to him, he goes, you know what? He goes, I'm real sorry what happened to you and your friend, to your girlfriend, but, like, nothing happens in this city without my say so.
Yep.
But he goes, but if it's any consolation, it really put a smile on my face. And then Eric plants his hands on Top Dollar, and he goes, all the pain, all for you. And then, like, you just see all the flashes of, like, like Shelley, like, in the emergency room, and she's, like, dying pretty much. And he's like, ah, and he falls.
Yep, and he dies.
Onto a gargoyle with the blood, like, pouring out of the mouth. It's really awesome. And then, there's no real fanfare. He just goes right back to the graveyard, and he touches the stone, and that's when we see Shelley, all ghostly and beautiful, walking up to him, and they're finally together.
Yeah. The end.
And you know what? We had mentioned, like, we had just done Bride of Chucky, last week. Of course, those little fuckers are, like, some of the most toxic characters there's ever been.
Yeah, this wasn't toxic. They weren't toxic. They absolutely adored each other. He was so good to Shelley.
Yeah. If you remember, this was actually this was in tribute. The movie was in tribute to Brandon and Eliza, and I think Eliza was a publicist that Brandon had met, and they were actually engaged during the filming of the movie. So she became a widow.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, like, we talk about legacy, and, I think, movies like this are, the thing that kind of started that whole thing, where, like, it's just sacred. You don't touch it.
I think we need to have a moment of silence for Brandon Lee.
Yeah, dude was awesome. Like, I've talked to people that have actually met him, and, like, they talked about how cool he was, and I've actually, like, like, heard all kinds of interviews. The guy was just so, just
amazing.
Well, he was just, like, not even just amazing, but he was just kind of like, there was an intensity to him, and there was a light to him, but there was also a darkness, and I think that's why he was able to play Eric so well.
Right.
Because of that, because of that whole kind of dichotomy of, just the person that he was.
Right.
He was very chill and relaxed, but at the same time, he's also very philosophical.
Yeah.
And, he's just like a relaxed, chill dude, like, probably one of the best things for him, when he came to film this movie. Like, he just got to smoke cigarettes all the time. Because if you look at the actual behind the scenes, he's constantly got a cigarette in his hand. He's, tragic is even the word. I mean, like, not only did he lose his life, but we lost the gift that was Brandon Lee, because I can only imagine what he would do in this industry.
Right.
In the 30 years, that he should be here, Yeah, it's sad. So, yeah, that's The Crow. We absolutely love it. It's all over our house. We cherish this movie, and
I have had a placard, or have had 2 placards of Brandon Lee the Crow since way before I even met you.
So that's our show. We're gonna stay grounded in the aughts. When it comes to the 90s into the 2000s. Because next week we're going to talk about another one of Melody's favorite movies. I actually really enjoy this movie quite a bit, but I feel like it should be talked about because it's pretty awesome. But it's a movie that became a cult hit through the years. It didn't really do well when it first came out, but really honestly, after The Matrix, just launched Keanu Reeves into further becoming an action star. And we're talking about Constantine, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary.
And they need to make a sequel already.
That's the interesting thing that we're going to talk about. But Keanu Reeves just did an interview with Francis Lawrence, the director, and he had actually said in the interview, he goes, "If there's any character that I want to play, this is the one I'm absolutely aching to play again." So he does want to play Constantine. So that's it. Thank you for joining us. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, it definitely helps us out with the algorithm. Well, that's it for us, guys. See you next week for Constantine. And you know what? There's a lot of sadness going on in the world, and but there's also a lot of good. And just remember that it can't rain all the time.
It can't rain all the time.
We will scare you later. Talk to you soon.